Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So every single year without fail, right before the NHL playoffs start to roll around, the discourse starts to begin on the Canadian Cup drought, considering it's been 32 years since the Montreal Canadiens won it in 1993. No Canadian team has won it since then, 5 of which, every single one outside of Toronto and Winnipeg, have made it to the Stanley Cup Finals but have not got it done. That becomes a point of contention. Who's the most likely to win it in this season, this upcoming Stanley Cup playoffs? So this video is not going to be just solely this season. I'm going to be looking at overall who I think is going to be the team most likely to break it. Could be this season, could be 5 seasons from now. Just what I think, who has the best odds to break it, given their current core, basically the next 10 to 15 years or something like that. So yeah, we are going to be going 1 through 7. And it's really crazy because I did this last year before the playoffs, and my list is not completely different, but there is a lot of movement. Here it is from last year. I had Oilers, Leafs, Canucks, Canadiens, Jets, Senators. I kind of trolled the Calgary Flames by putting an expansion team, and then the Flames in last. So yeah, 1 through 7, who I think is most likely to break the record. Seems pretty self-explanatory. This season's going to matter the most, but if a team has an extremely bright future and is coming up, they might be a little bit higher than you might expect. Up first and dead last, and they are a pretty safe dead last, I got the Vancouver Canucks. Last year, again, third after having that magical season. Pettersson was playing great. Hughes was playing great. Miller, Besser scored 40 goals. Everything has flipped on its head, and it's looking disastrous. JT Miller's gone at this point. Brock Besser's most likely gone in free agency. Pettersson and Demko are both like shells of themselves that just cannot stay healthy. They don't have that good of a prospect pool unless Lecker, Amaki, and Willander turn into absolute studs. I think that this team's just going to be battling mediocrity, 85 to 95. But they're by no means a bad team, but in a weird way, that's kind of bad. I think that they're just going to middle away for the next couple years. Quinn Hughes is that good of a player to keep them somewhat competitive, but in terms of potentially winning a Stanley Cup, I don't see it really with this current core. They'd have to get very lucky in the draft, or Pettersson somehow even eclipse his previous form in 2022, 2023. It's not looking good for the Vancouver Canucks. They're kind of stuck in no man's land at this point, and it would take a miracle for them to win the Stanley Cup in the next 5 years. I would even see 5 to 6 years. It's not looking good. Next up, the Calgary Flames were in last time, and I'm a pretty safe dead last. They were kind of where the Vancouver Canucks were, considering the fact that they were having another 81-point season. They didn't really have that elite of a prospect pool. Things have definitely flipped on its head in the last 12 months. Again, they're still 6th, but they're closer to 5th than probably the Vancouver Canucks at 7th, considering the fact Dustin Wolf, we knew he was a good prospect last year, but actually seeing it fully at the NHL level, he's without a doubt the best, most promising U25 goalie in the entire NHL. They got Zane Parekh in the draft, who had yet another amazing season in the OHL. Looks like he can be a franchise top 10 defenseman. Their current core isn't going to cut it with Weegar, Huberdeau, Kadri, and Anderson, but if they can somehow get a franchise forward in the next 2 to 3 years, a trio of Parekh, Wolf in that franchise forward, as well as solid prospect pool of guys like Coronado, who's been really good at the NHL level, Connor Zary, Gridden, Henry Muse, Adar Suniev, as well as those older guys, the current core kind of just being veterans at that point. They could maybe contend in 3 to 4 years or something like that. There's some solid pieces there where last year was just like Dustin Wolf and a whole lot of average prospect pools. They definitely have a much brighter future than 12 months ago. In 5th, I got the Ottawa Senators. I talked about this a lot in my rebuild review. They're a playoff team now. I think they're going to maintain being a playoff team for the next 5 to 6 years. The path to become that true contender in the Eastern Conference might be a little bit difficult. They're going to need Tim Stützle to truly develop into a 100-point beast number 1 center, or Jake Sanderson to turn into that top 10, maybe even like top 6 or 7 defenseman in the NHL. Because at this point, they're still young. Again, their guys are going to get slightly better, but they don't really have jack shit in the prospect pool that's going to get them to potentially that next level. Again, I think they're going to be a consistent playoff team, but just getting into that top 5, top 6 range might be a little bit rough unless Yakimchuk fully reaches his potential. Levi Merilainen turns into a franchise netminder, or if they keep their pick this year and draft an absolute stud at 19th, 20th overall, which in this draft would be a miracle. I think Ottawa's going to be a very good team for the next, again, 5 to 7 years. I just have a little bit of doubts just because of how lackluster they genuinely have, like a bottom 5 prospect pool in the NHL to get to that next level of true contention. And as a result, they're kind of a safe 5th place at this point. I love the Ottawa Senators, and I'm rooting for them, but I think that them at 5th makes a lot of sense. Toronto at 4th. This season, they're probably like number one or number two, but I just can't trust this group, considering what they've done year in and year out in the playoffs. If you told me that all of the big four were going to cook in the playoffs, yeah, I could easily see them win the Stanley Cup. That just has not happened throughout this entire core's 6 or 7 years in the playoffs together. It has just been underwhelming. Again, they still don't have a number one defenseman. Talked about that in yesterday's weakness videos, and it's not like they're going to get anything anytime soon. And there's a lot of uncertainty about the core heading into this summer. Matthew Knies' potential offer sheet, Mitch Marner, unrestricted free agent, John Tavares, unrestricted free agent. They're going to be in the mix for the next 3 to 5 years, definitely. But just given this team's track record and given this team's kind of choking history, I can't put them. You could maybe put them number 3. I personally couldn't have them number 2 within this. Number 3, I got the Winnipeg Jets. Like Toronto, they're either number 1 or number 2. I'd probably say number 1 this season for Canadian teams in terms of making the Stanley Cup and winning the Stanley Cup. But the track record, similarly to Toronto, isn't that encouraging considering the last 2 years. They've been first round exits, losing in 5 games. The Colorado series was very underwhelming. But yeah, I think with the emergence of Dylan Sandberg, they could potentially go on a deep run this season and win the Stanley Cup. It's going to come down to Connor Hellebuyck. Really, like that's if he has a great playoff run the next 3 years, they won't likely win the Stanley Cup, but they'll probably make a Stanley Cup final if he just says, I'm the best goalie on the goddamn planet. Just give me solid defense, give me some goal scoring. But the problem with them, why they're not number 1 or number 2, their core isn't like ancient by any stretch, but mostly they are between the ages of like 28 to 32. Outside of like Cole Perfetti, even Velarde's like 26 years old. They're kind of getting up there in age. I think that they're going to have 2 more years of high-level contention after this. But then after that, it's probably going to go downhill. Again, Hellebuck's like 32 years old. Scheifele's 32, 31. Morrissey's 29 or 30 at this point. Ehlers and Connor are in their late 20s. So there's some concern there. And also, they're just very unfortunate as long as divisional seeding is there. They got Colorado and Dallas to deal with just to make it to the Western Conference Finals. So they probably have like the hardest path the next 5 years, and their window is probably only the next 5 years, considering I haven't seen quite enough from their prospects to think that they're going to be able to replace the high-level guys that they have right now. So still, it's very possible Winnipeg Jets the next 5 years, I'd give them a 32% chance to win the Stanley Cup or something like that. But there is some age concern, and they haven't really quite proved it in the playoffs yet. Montreal at number 2. They are very ahead of schedule, and their logic is pretty straightforward. They're already in the playoffs. Their core is still very young. Guys like Lane Hudson, Caulfield, Slavkovsky, Goulet are only going to get better. And unlike Ottawa, they have a loaded prospect pool. Ottawa has a no doubt, not a no doubt, but probably a bottom 5 prospect pool. Montreal has a no doubt top 5 prospect pool still coming up within their system. They got the best prospect in hockey making his debut tonight in Ivan Demidov. Even if he doesn't reach his full potential, I think I'd say like a floor, but like probably going to at least be a 70, 75 point elite first liner. Has the potential to be a top 20, top 15 player in the NHL. Michael Hage at Michigan is looking like a very, very good prospect, potentially their answer to their second line center needs. Jacob Fowler's been arguably the best goalie in college hockey the last 2 seasons. David Reinbacher, while maybe not worth the 5th overall pick, is looking like he's going to be a steady right-handed guy, and they need right-handed guys in their defense core. So yeah, their core is young right now. They're making the playoffs. I don't think they're going to be a contender until like 2028. If that makes sense. I think next year, yet again, make the playoffs. The year after that, maybe be in a divisional spot. And then after that, be really ready to go. But once they get in there, from 2028 to 2035, there's not many teams that have a brighter future than the Montreal Canadiens. And considering they locked up a lot of their core guys like Caulfield, Suzuki, Caden Goulet, Slavkovsky's got to play a little bit better to justify that 7.6. But they got a lot of guys on very cheap deals that are going to allow them to make big moves in the next couple off seasons in terms of bringing in elite talent. Kent Hughes has really built it right. And as a result, I got them at number 2. Number 1, though, I just kind of refuse to believe that Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl won't win a cup together in Edmonton over the next 5 years. They got to the Stanley Cup Finals, Game 7, 2 goals away from winning it. And now that if Draisaitl was unsigned right now, and maybe have him number 2, maybe have him number 3 because maybe they would leave. But Draisaitl re-signed, I guarantee you at this point, if Draisaitl re-signed, especially in the summer, McDavid's all but going to re-sign, barring like an apocalyptic season next year where they miss the playoffs. They're going to fix the goaltending. I know that this is hinging on a lot of hypotheticals with McDavid and with the goaltending, but if they lose this round, also this season, it's not looking too good considering they lost Ekholm. But I think whether it's 2026, 2027, 2028, they're going to get it done. I was a little bit concerned with their cap situation because of McDry and Bouchard, their contracts coming up. But now that the cap is jumping so much, they're going to be fine in that regard. I just think Edmonton will get it done in the next 5 years. Like, they're eventually just going to have to go nuclear one season in terms of all in. They got two of the three best players in the entire NHL. So, yeah, I'm willing to bet on the Edmonton Oilers, and their stars, unlike teams like Toronto, show up every single year in the playoffs at historic best of the 21st century kind of rates. They just ran into another wagon in the Florida Panthers. I think eventually they get it done and bring home a Stanley Cup to Edmonton. So here's the top seven. Well, I guess there's only seven, so it's not really a top seven. Here's 1 through 7. Vancouver, Calgary, Ottawa, Toronto, Winnipeg, Montreal, and Edmonton. Let me know in the comments, what do you think? I'm sure people are going to be kind of mad that I have Montreal ahead of Toronto and Winnipeg. Again, the next 2 to 3 years, definitely taking those two teams, but I think that, and of course, other teams are going to emerge between 2020 and 2028 to 2035. But I think that it looks like it could potentially be like a Montreal being the best team in the NHL. Let me know in the comments. What do you think? I'll be seeing the next one. Peace.